a lot of the stuff that you're going to see and hear, a lot of it you already know. I would imagine some of it we've seen a couple years ago, some of it you haven't. But and most of you in here, I'd say all of you but me, practice this stuff in school because I'm too old to have done any shooter stuff. Now we did fire drills, but that was about it. But at any rate, one of the points I want to drive home today when we go through this is that these things can be real and it can happen, whether you think it wouldn't or not. But at any rate, when we have drills, we want to make sure people participate fully, not just halfway. I'm going to turn my lights out because we're going to have a lockdown, but I got to continue my lesson. No, we need to do it the right way because as was mentioned earlier this morning, if something should happen, heaven forbid, the college is going to be judged, as they said, by what you do. And everybody needs to know exactly what to do, when it happens, if it happens. So if Josh goes through these things, we'll have time for questions, but should you have a question as we're going through it, please let us know, and we'll try to ease your fears the best we can. But just know that we want you to understand what to do, know what to do, make sure your students know what to do should anything happen, because you're the one that's ultimately responsible for who is in your classroom. So please take this seriously, and like I said, if you have questions, be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Donnie. Before we get started here, I'm going to just present something that might make this a little more interesting. This is what we're really here for, folks, in case you were wondering. So, and if you haven't seen this movie, it's Office Space. My wife turned me onto it, and it's hilarious.
Hello, Peter. What's happening? We have sort of a problem here. Yeah, you apparently didn't put one of the new cover sheets on your TPS reports.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry about that. I forgot.
Yeah. You see, we're putting the cover sheets on all TPS reports now before they go out. Did you see the memo about this?
Yeah. Yeah, I have the memo right here. I just forgot. But it's not shipping out till tomorrow, so there's no problem.
Yeah. If you could just go ahead and make sure you do that from now on, that would be great. And I'll go ahead and make sure you get another copy of that memo. Okay?
Yeah, no, I have the memo. I got it. It's right.
Okay, that's just a little lighthearted humor to get us started, you know. I didn't understand that until I worked in this environment, but makes a lot more sense now. So, but no, in all seriousness, what we're really here to talk about today is the Emergency Action Plan. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Josh Brewster. I am a retired Hudson police officer. I spent 13 years there. Prior to retiring, I was at the main campus as your SRO for 5 years, and I have now worked at the college for the past 3 years as the security director. So there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that you may or may not know about. We're going to talk about a little bit of that today. And then, like Donnie said, if you have questions at any point, feel free to chime in and let me know. I find it's easier to kind of address them when we're at a bullet point versus waiting till the end and whatnot. So what is the Emergency Action Plan? Okay. It's designed to provide you all with a contingency plan in case of a campus emergency, including but not limited to fire, lockdowns, violent hostile intruder, severe weather, medical, and first aid. Okay. So where do you find this information? Well, I'm glad that you asked that question. Okay? And if you didn't ask, you should have, because in every classroom, you'll find one of these, okay? If you don't have one, let me know, and we'll make sure you get one. This is merely a quick reference guide for, in a situation, listing any of those incidents where you can reference this and be like, boom, okay, this is what I do. Flip it over, fire, better get out of the building. Kind of common sense right there, okay? In the case of a fire, though, you would want to refer to your employee handbook because this details the rally points for our evacuation with your students, depending on what classroom, what building you're in. So again, this should have been given to you upon hire. If you don't have a copy of it, I'm sure you can get another copy of it from Rose and Human Resources. And these are supposed to be in every classroom. Again, if they're not, let me know. My email will be up at the end of the slideshow, and I will be glad to get you a copy of it. It's very handy to have to just reference real quick, and especially when you need it. So the full EAI plan is actually located on the college homepage. You can go to Home, About CCCTI, then down to Policies and Procedures, Section 3, start on page 60, and 15 pages of glorious reading for you. So, okay. But we want you to be familiar with the action plan, okay? So the expectations for you are to participate in drills and training sessions as required. Point today. So, okay. These drills are mandatory when we conduct them. So I don't have that up there, but I want to convey that they are mandatory. So it's good to walk through your primary and secondary evacuation routes at least once to be familiar with where are the emergency exits, okay? This obviously doesn't apply to all of you, but know the location of flammable, biological, and hazardous materials should they be in your classroom. Know where the fire alarm stations are located, okay? First aid kits, they're in every building, but do you know where they are? No, well, it doesn't do you much good if you don't know where they're at, okay? And then you need to orient and inform your students of these procedures to be followed in case of an emergency, okay? And of course, it's always good to know where the fire extinguishers are located and how to use them, okay? This next slide, a little dated because normally this presentation takes place prior to the semester starting, but what you do want to do is have a brief conversation, orientation, whatever you'd like to call it, with your students so that they know what they need to do when evacuation is required, when the fire alarm system is activated, or the procedures of lockdown. I cannot stress enough that the employees are responsible for the safety and security of the students, okay? We're here because they're here, to put it very simply. That's the reason we all have jobs, is because of the students. So, thank you, sir. Did you have a question in the back? How are we going to notify you in case of an emergency? Well, we utilize several different forms of notification. Dr. Porch talked a little bit about this morning. We will use email. Our primary source of getting information out to you as fast as possible is through Regroup. So again, if you're not signed up for that, you need to be. It's very important, and it is our primary source of getting information out. Of course, there's also the use of social media, the intercom system, which we are always working to upgrade that. Fire alarms, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. College website will be used if we're talking about weather emergencies or things of that nature. And then, of course, telephone messages. So it's just going to depend on what type of emergency is taking place in regards to how we get that email out. But you can always count on Regroup being used. And you can't stress that enough, is that's just the fastest way to get information to you in the timeliest manner, okay? So what is evacuation? Well, simply, as used in this plan, it refers to the movement of students, employees, and visitors from the danger zone in a rapid and safe manner. Get out of the building as safely and quickly as possible, okay? Now, we have two types of evacuation. One would be the campus evacuation, might be required where there's an immediate threat to campus. For those of you that were here on campus in the fall of 21, when Smoky Mountain Furniture struck a gas line when they were working on their parking lot, that would be considered a campus evacuation. We had to shut down, and we had to shut down quickly because there was an imminent danger with that gas leak. And, we just, boom, we had to get out of here. Boom, no pun intended. But now, the other day when we had a power failure, certainly that is an evacuation, but that doesn't constitute an active emergency, okay? So we're going to define emergency here in a little bit, and we'll kind of talk about that here in a little bit more. And of course, the second type of evacuation would be just a building evacuation, and this is going to be like an internal emergency, such as fire in that building, where you need to still get out as fast as possible. But again, once you get out, you've got to know where to evacuate to and know where those rally points are. And where do we find those? in our employee handbook, okay? So, and they're gonna be different for every classroom that you're in. If you're teaching in F and you have a class in E, I can promise you, you're not gonna be rallying in the same spot, okay? Speaking of fire, this is what we're gonna talk about next. So, in case of fire, you should know the location of a fire extinguisher, fire exits, and alarm poles in your area. I'm here to tell you this is not the time to find out where the closest fire extinguisher is. It would probably behoove you to know that before you need to use it, okay? So that's one thing to definitely take advantage of, is learning where the fire extinguishers, fire exits, and alarms are in regards to where your classrooms are in the buildings that you're in, okay? Obviously, in the case of smoke or fire, call 911, okay? These aren't necessarily in a specific order, but obviously what we want to do most is get you out of the building. Once you're at that point, notify the switchboard. Don't use the elevator to get out of the building. Close all the windows and doors as you leave the room. If you're in the physics lab, turn off the burning equipment. We don't need to give the fire any incentive to spread. But once you're outside, move quickly to your designated areas and account for all your students, okay? And I can't stress it enough that we would much rather lose a building than a life. So don't underestimate how fast a fire can spread, okay? A couple more points on fire. Take the shortest route out to an exit if it's blocked by fire, debris, or hazard. Smoke is the greatest danger in a fire. Get as low to the floor, use a wet towel if possible. Touch the door if it's hot, don't open it. If it's not hot, open it slowly. And don't take your personal belongings with you. If you forget them, you forgot them, they're not worth it. I mean, this is common sense, folks. This is stuff we've been doing since kindergarten. So we should all be familiar with this, okay? There will be one fire drill each semester. There will be one fire drill each semester. How many will there be each semester? Ah, very good. So we all know that there will going to be a fire drill this semester. Okay, so periodically check your area for anything that may obstruct your route. Supervisors and instructors, are to account for individuals in their respective classes and areas. When we drill, report any missing students or staff to your supervisor, okay? And as soon as the all clear has been given, you may return to your building. Once again, there will be one fire drill each semester. Participation is mandatory, okay? And know the rally points for your classrooms and buildings, okay? Very important to know those rally points, because if your students get out there and you can't account for them, then we've got problems, okay? This is what we're going to talk about pretty in-depth right here, and it's unfortunately one of the realities of today, but we do have to deal with it, okay? So, what's an emergency? An emergency does not necessarily constitute an active shooter, okay? An emergency on campus is actively causing harm or threat, imminent deadly threat or harm to people, and you must immediately seek cover and call 911, okay? Students may or may not know what to do. They're going to look to you as their educators to make sure to lead them, okay? So you need to know what to do, because they are not necessarily going to know what to do, okay? And again, doesn't always constitute an active shooter. I mean, if a building catches on fire, that's an emergency, okay? So when we have a lockdown, what do? Well, we don't panic, okay? But unfortunately, if I tell you to panic, not to panic, what's the first thing you're going to do? Exactly. It's human nature. It's just the way it goes, okay? But I can tell you not to panic, and in a high stress situation, that's the first thing that's going to happen, okay? So our procedure consists of, once that alert is given, get the students out of the hallways and into the classrooms. This should be a quick sweep of the hallways and take less than 60 seconds. In all honesty, folks, I mean, if you're teaching, you hear the lockdown drill go off or the alert go off, open that door, look out there, grab any students you can, swoop them into your classroom, and get that door closed. Okay, just like that fast. I mean, 60 seconds, because when we drill, we're also evaluating you and taking notes, and then we all debrief afterwards, and we know who does well and who doesn't do so well. So, and I'll just leave it at that. But So that's the first thing we do. Make a quick sweep, get the students out of the hallway, okay? Classroom doors should always remain in a locked position so that even when open for quick security of the room or the office, okay? I know this was talked about, this was a question that was brought up this morning. Here at Caldwell, this is not just a suggestion. This is actually policy, that you keep your classroom doors in a locked position, okay? So that's important. Yes, sir?
That's wonderful, I appreciate that, except for several people use the same classroom I do,
Mm-hmm.
and so sometimes the door gets unlocked. Although they trust me with many things, they don't trust me with the classroom key. Relock the door if I need to, and sometimes, yes, some do have the button presses that you can fix it with, and some do not.
Well, when I say that they should be locked, I'm talking about when class is in session. Okay, so like if you're not in that classroom and there's nobody in that classroom, it doesn't necessarily need to remain locked at that point. But when you're teaching, you better have the door locked, okay?
And again, if I don't have the key and it doesn't have the button presses for me to lock it, then I
Well,
certainly understand why
Ye-
keys are.
Yeah, and you lead me right into my next bullet point of, well, no, I'm sorry, that's not my next bullet point. But it is a very important bullet point, but we're going to talk about that a little bit more in regards to the actual lockdown of what you should do if you can't lock the door, okay? But yes, touching on this bullet point right here, don't sound the alarm to evacuate, the fire alarm to evacuate. I know this kind of feels like this is what you should do because you want to get people out of the building, but the last thing we want is people running into the path of gunfire, okay? Okay, so lock and secure doors and turn off all the lights. Of course, we should already have our doors locked, and then once they're secured, we turn off the lights. If the door doesn't lock, there's the bullet point I was looking for. Barricade the door with desks and chairs. I mean, that's the best we can do in that situation, so.
I understand there's actually a product out that's the equivalent of a kick wedge that you put on the back of the door, drop in place.
There is, yes. There's a lot of products in the market. There's a lot of products out there that are great. A lot of products out there that cost money. So it's just a matter of we have to pick and choose what works best for us. So, I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about, and that is actually a good product. And yes, I am aware I'm sweating bullets up here.
Anything just
But-
like a little old wooden wedge,
Yes.
slide under the door, you can't get it open. That's better than being locked, really, because it's hard to get open.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, exactly.
And some doors will not lock. I mean, I know that question came up in the last session. What do I do if my door doesn't lock? Okay, well, do the best you can, but at the same time, if it's an issue with the door, like not locking, and it has a locking mechanism on it, you need to fill out a maintenance request and get that taken care of by maintenance so they can address that, because they don't know unless you tell them, okay? So,
But a question I would have is how would that door get unlocked to begin with? Because it should stay in a locked position. If there's not a class going on, the door can remain open. So that whenever you close it, you're locked. You don't have to worry about a key or anything.
I have asked, and apparently it's magical. It unlocks itself.
Oh, does it?
Yeah. Apparently, because nobody's
Maybe
ever.
I need a camera there so I can see what key is unlocking that door.
That might be, because it's not mine.
again, this is lockdown procedure. These are the the points that we want to follow when we're actually doing a lockdown drill, okay? And after you get your door blockaded or barricaded or shut, whatever you need to do, lie on the floor, possibly under desks if you need to. Keep your students quiet and out of sight, okay? And remain silent. This is the hardest part, of course. Silencing electronics. We live in a digital world where we're all dependent on social media and everybody's got their nose in their phone all the time. But unless you're putting out critical information that you know for certain, there's my phone beeping right now, that you know, for example, that the shooter is right outside this door and you can notify somebody of that information. Misinformation is worse than real information, and that's when we really get into trouble if we start putting out misinformation, okay? Okay, so what is an active shooter? Well, according to U.S. Department of Homeland Security, an active shooter is someone who is actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill people in a confined and populated area. Simply put, that's it. This person has the sole intention of killing as many people as they can as fast as possible, okay? They're not typically picking targets. Their goal is to just kill. And unfortunately, again, this is the society that we live in. The majority of active shooter events are pre-planned. Most of these are carried out by a single person. Obviously, that was not the case with Columbine. but Columbine changed everything in regards to how law enforcement handles active shooters, what we know about active shooters, and we've come a long ways in that. I guess it's been close to 30 years now since Columbine took place. And again, Columbine was a rarity in itself because you had 2 students that were willing to lose their life. And when you have that take place, it's very hard to combat that, okay? The shooter has usually prepared themselves with the intent of killing as many people as possible. We talked about that. That is their goal, okay? Sometimes, and this was the case of UNC last week, there's actually a designated target, but there's usually additional collateral damage when that happens. With UNC last week, that shooter was mainly concerned about killing his advisor and his instructor, okay? We're very fortunate that there was no additional collateral damage with what took place at UNC. In most cases, the active shooter has already accepted the fact that they are going to die. Okay, there's not much more you can say about that. I mean, if they're willing to go in and kill people, they're willing to be killed themselves. Okay. Active shooter events typically don't last long. Most are over within 10 to 15 minutes. Several reasons why: because law enforcement has stopped the shooter, the gun jams, the shooter runs out of bullets, or the shooter kills himself prior to law enforcement arrival. I will say that surrender is the least likely option. So these people they know ahead of time, in all likelihood, that they're going to die. So they're not planning on being taken alive. Okay. So what will law enforcement's response be in that case? Law enforcement will not stop to help the wounded. They're trained to go to the gun and neutralize the threat. This is crucial for you to understand. I'm sure some of you have heard it before, but it's also what most people struggle with the most because you think of the police are always there to help you. They will step over the dead and dying to stop the threat. I mean, that was evidenced by the Nashville shooting. And in a minute here, we're going to watch that video, and just fair warning, it's somewhat graphic. If you feel uncomfortable with that, you may want to step out, but I think it's important to see that video because it gives you an opportunity to see what law enforcement's response looks like, and it's also a textbook response by law enforcement of how they will go after an active shooter. Okay, so we're gonna watch that video now if anybody's uncomfortable with watching that. I will say at the end, the video is blurred out at the end, so you don't actually see the last part of it. But the volume is there. So. Right here is where the officers hear gunfire going upstairs.
Shots fired, shots fired, shots fired, move. Right.
Okay. I know that's hard to watch, but I think it's important that you see that because it allows you to understand what law enforcement's goal is in that situation. And it also allows you to see that this is a high-intensity, rapidly evolving situation. They heard gunfire upstairs. They immediately changed direction and went upstairs and went to the gun. You may or may not have seen it in that video, but there was a body on the floor. It was blurred out. They went right past that body. You may wonder why the fire alarms were going off. They were going off because one of the students tried to pull the fire alarm to warn other students, and unfortunately that student was killed in that incident. Okay? But here's some things I want you to keep in mind, especially in case of an active shooter or an emergency like that on campus, is law enforcement from everywhere in the county is going to be converging on our campus, and they have no idea who you are. Okay? It's a rapidly evolving situation, and we don't have all the answers and know how many shooters there are. Okay? So to them, everyone is a suspect. Okay? In the event of a lockdown, you'll only be evacuated by law enforcement. Last week at UNC, I was reading an article, and one of the students that they interviewed, they didn't know how they were supposed to leave. They had an officer knock on the door and tell them they were there to evacuate them. They asked to see their badge to take them out, and that's perfectly acceptable and perfectly fine. Okay? There'll also be a notification sent out via email and regroup that, you know, the situation has been secured, but again, you're only going to be evacuated by law enforcement. Okay? When you're evacuating, carry nothing with you that could be mistaken for a weapon. I think that speaks for itself. And when you encounter police, keep your hands over your head and comply with the officer's instructions. Again, hysterically screaming and running out of the building, you're likely to end up staring down the barrel of a gun because law enforcement is in a high stress, rapidly evolving situation, and for them, communication is not instantaneous. So they're not gonna know, again, whether you're suspect or whether you're just a panicked student or a panicked teacher or who knows who, just somebody that happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. This picture right here, this is from UNC last weekend, okay? There's 4 to 5 different agencies in that photograph alone. And I guarantee you that trooper right there at this time that this photograph was taken does not know how many shooters there were, who the shooter was, where they were at, okay? So that's what's important to stress to you is that this is what campus will look like. God forbid we have that situation, okay? There's gonna be police from every department around, okay? And they're all gonna be converging and trying to find that shooter. And so if you are going out of a building, you need to make sure that you keep your hands where you can be seen because, you know, like I said, everybody's gonna be a suspect until we know who the true suspect is, okay? This next video is a video I've sent out before. I sent it out after our fall lockdown drill last year. It's very well produced. It gives you your options in the case of an active shooter. I know that we drill one way, but that's not always necessarily your best option. And I think this video does a very good job of kind of spelling out what your options are in regards to an active shooter. So we'll watch this and then take some questions after that.
It may feel like just another day at the office, but occasionally, life feels more like an action movie than reality. The authorities are working hard to protect you and to protect our public spaces. But sometimes, bad people do bad things. Their motivations are different. The warning signs may vary, but the devastating effects are the same. And unfortunately, you need to be prepared for the worst. If you were ever ever to find yourself in the middle of an active shooter event, your survival may depend on whether or not you have a plan. The plan doesn't have to be complicated. There are 3 things you could do that make a difference. Run, hide, fight. First and foremost, if you can get out, do. Always try and escape or evacuate, even when others insist on staying. Encourage others to leave with you, but don't let them slow you down with indecision. Remember what's important, you, not your stuff. Leave your belongings behind and try to find a way to get out safely. Trying to get yourself out of harm's way needs to be your #1 priority. Once you are out of the line of fire, try to prevent others from walking into the danger zone and call 911. If you can't get out safely, you need to find a place to hide. Act quickly and quietly. Try to secure your hiding place the best you can. Turn out lights, and if possible, remember to lock doors. Silence your ringer and vibration mode on your cell phone. And if you can't find a safe room or closet, try to conceal yourself behind large objects that may protect you. Do your best to remain quiet and calm. As a last resort, if your life is at risk, whether you are alone or working together as a group, fight. Act with aggression. Improvise weapons. Disarm him. And commit to taking the shooter down, no matter what. Try to be aware of your environment. Always have an exit plan. Know that in an incident like this, victims are generally chosen randomly. The event is unpredictable and may evolve quickly. The first responders on the scene are not there to evacuate or tend to the injured. They are well trained and are there to stop the shooter. Your actions can make a difference for your safety and survival. Be aware and be prepared. And if you find yourself facing an active shooter, there are 3 key things you need to remember to survive. Run, hide, fight.
Okay. Again, we cannot train this way when we do our lockdown drills for obvious reasons. If we simulated this and had everybody running out of the buildings, we'd never get students back in classroom and you'd lose an entire day of instruction. So that's why we drill one way, but the bottom line is in a real life imminent threat, these are your 3 options, okay? And that's why it says a lockdown does not always mean remain in place. If you can do it, you need to get out of that building, okay? And if you can't get out of that building, you need to hide and barricade yourself as best as possible. Again, lights out, out of sight. Active shooters are not typically looking for a specific target. They're looking for easy targets. And if the door's locked, they're not going to specifically try to break into that classroom. They'll move on to an easier location because, again, their goal is to cause as much catastrophic damage as possible in a short period of time because they know they only have a limited time. And of course, the last option is to fight. And active shooters they're on a mission to kill, okay? They're not going to respond to you trying to talk them out of it. Fight is the last resort, and don't fight fair because they won't. And you got to remember that fight like you're fighting for your life because really you are, okay? So again, simply put, run if you can, hide if you can't, fight if you must. That's what I really want you to take away from today is that, because that's your best option, okay? We're an open campus, folks, and we're here for the community, and we can't very well do that without allowing people in the buildings, okay? I can't tell you what to do in every given situation. We can hypothesize all day about this or about that, but I can give you options. Every situation is going to be different, and you need to be prepared for all three, and students need to be able to look to you when you make that decision because they're going to follow your lead, okay? Medical emergency, we won't spend too much time on this topic right here. Basically, obviously, what do you do in an emergency? Call 911, be prepared to tell them what happened, how many people are in need of help, what's being done. Don't hang up on the dispatcher and notify the switchboard and stay with the victim till help arrives. And certainly don't move the victim unless they're in a life-threatening situation. Blood and body fluid exposure, if you're here to really want to discuss that, you should probably be down at B104 where they're talking about bloodborne pathogens right now. But the best thing I can tell you here is if it's not yours, don't touch it, because why would you? So, a couple of items here on campus safety. Some of this stuff's pretty general, but keep your car doors locked at all times. Don't leave valuables in plain sight that are in your vehicle. Backpacks, personal property, laptops, iPads, all those sort of things. Put something on them so that they're identifiable. Because if you come to me and you just tell me, hey, somebody stole my iPad, what did it look like? Well, it's black. That doesn't help me, doesn't help Sergeant Manning over there when it comes time to actually trying to track this down and find it. Record the serial numbers on these items, because if they get entered as stolen, we have to have the serial number. That's the only way we can record them, okay? Keep your office locked when you're out. Again, this is not a suggestion, this is policy, that your office must remain locked when you're not in it, okay? If you're in it, that's fine. You have open office hours, more power to you. But if you're not there, you need to lock the door when you leave, okay? I know a lot of vehicles these days have keyless, remote start, push button start. My wife's vehicle has this, and she can start the car from Connecticut, and she thinks it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. So, but as we roll into winter months, it's a good idea, and it's getting darker earlier outside, to make sure that as soon as you get to your car, you can get in your car. There's no reason to be standing around fumbling with your keys at that point once you're out in the parking lot where you're more vulnerable. Okay. Another thing I'll mention in regards to keeping your items safe is air tags. I am very prone to lose my keys. So look at that. My wife put an Apple AirTag on me, so she's got me low-jacked. And but she says it's to keep track of my keys, but I know the real reason. So, but more than anything, if you see something, say something. You heard it mentioned this morning that the groundskeeper, I believe it was, saw that one student come back on campus and they knew he shouldn't be there and he was carrying a bag and it was a long bag. If you see something, say something. I mean, you may think it's minor or not important, but you may also be the only one that sees it. So I would much rather you overreact than underreact, okay? A couple of points on severe weather. This is actually a real tornado from Wilson, North Carolina. from April 16th, 2011. There were 24 tornadoes and 20 fatalities that day due to tornadoes. So obviously we know that we are susceptible to tornadoes here. In the event of severe weather, such as thunderstorms or tornado, we will provide you with as much information as reasonably possible. I stress reasonable, because we don't have information instantaneously, okay? We'll give it to you when we get it. That's the best we can do, okay? Obviously, in the case of snow, we're gonna know in advance if we're gonna have a snowstorm or something like that. But a thunderstorm or tornado, for those of you who were here, the first time we lost power 3 weeks ago, that thunderstorm popped up. We were under severe thunderstorm warning, but boom, that thing popped up and it felt like a hurricane. I don't know about you, but that was wild. And then we were without power, and so there's just not a lot of opportunity there to provide warning, whereas with a snowstorm or an event like that, there will be, okay? I probably don't have to talk about this too much. I'm sure most of you are familiar with watches and warnings, meaning that conditions are favorable, be prepared, warning, thunderstorm has been sighted, or winter weather and ice is likely in the next 12 hours. For those of you that are visual learners, such as myself, this is a taco watch and this is a taco warning, okay? All of the ingredients are there to make a taco. Here we have a taco, so. In the event of a tornado, flying debris is going to be the greatest danger, okay? Getting caught in a room with a lot of windows can result in a death trap of glass and flying debris, okay? You want to crouch as low as possible with your head protecting the back of or with your head down, protecting the back of your head with your arms. Okay, safest areas to be on campus: interior bathrooms and hallways without windows, interior rooms with short ceiling spans, stairwells, the lowest floor in a building. Put as many walls between you and put as many walls as possible between you and the tornado. And of course, the safest rooms are ones without windows. Now, there's a little bit of a conundrum there in regards to go to the lowest floor of the building, because the lowest floor of H building is nothing but windows. So again, that's not probably the best place to go in regards to a tornado, but you know, just put as much distance between you and the tornado as you can from an interior room. This is the most likely threat that we're going to face here. Again, this happened 2 weeks ago and caused our massive power outage. If you hear thunder, you're close enough to the storm to be struck by it. You should seek shelter immediately. Telephone lines and metal pipes can conduct electricity, so avoid using them. And draw blinds or shades over the windows, and this will prevent any glass from broken window from shattering into the room. Okay. Here's a couple of things that we're actually working on. I'm sure all of you are familiar with the automated touchless doors. I did want to touch on that, no pun intended, in regards to the fact that when we do have a power failure, those doors will open, okay? But you have to open them manually, okay? So you go up to them and you give them a firm push, they're gonna pop open. You may think you broke them, trust me, you didn't break them. I would rather have you bust out the door than get stuck inside the building, okay? So trust me, they will open, and it's just, it takes a good firm push to do that. We're also looking at upgrading our intercom system because we know that we're lacking in some areas in that department. Watauga has a great intercom system. I mean, you guys are aces when it comes to your intercom system. We're also looking at upgrading Regroup to the ability to provide geofencing so that anyone within a certain radius will receive that alert, even if they're not signed up, as well as putting the alerts across your desktop. So if you're in your class teaching and you've got your phone down, boom, it pops up across your desktop computer, which is, you know, I think a great option right there. We currently have over 230 cameras, and we're still installing those. And we've also applied for a grant application to put AEDs in all of the buildings. And to the best of my knowledge, that grant application has been approved. So hopefully that will be taking place sometime in the near future. So, questions? Yes?
So I know we do a lot of preparation for preventing, like, let's say an active shooter. which is awesome, and we need to. But like you said in there, you know, if there are wounded people, they're gonna walk over them, and if you call 911, they're not going to come in. So can we not have training where anyone that is willing can learn, you know, if somebody's bleeding out, how to put a tourniquet and how to, you know, just basic stuff, because you could have 25 people, you know, potentially dying, and you're not gonna let anybody in the room to help you, so it seems like it would be a good thing for like a lot of people to know how to do that.
Well, certainly, let me backtrack to one part of your question there, which was that law enforcement is going to come in. They're going to come in no matter what. So they're, even if the doors are locked, they're going to have the ability to get in. Okay, well, that's one of the things that we're making sure that's aware or available with this new door system. Okay, in regards to the tourniquet, medical training, things like that, I really can't answer that. I mean, sure, it's a great idea. Whether it's feasible or not for us to do that, I would direct you more towards Dr. Porch to see if we can process that as possibly
I think it'll depend on the situation.
EAP for the future.
You're not gonna stop in the hallway if there's an active shooter and try to render aid to somebody. That just can't happen. You know, now if there's something, somebody fell down the steps or something of that nature, then yes, you can, you know, render some type of aid, but it just depends on the type of aid that's necessary for that person. But we've got folks on campus that can help with that.
But you're not gonna let them into the room if you're in a locked room with people bleeding. You're gonna lock your door for protection, which you have to, but that's what I'm saying, someone who's in the room.
Well, and you know, that's a double-edged sword. It really is. And I will say that the law enforcement officers that are on campus, they carry AEDs, they carry tourniquets, they carry Narcan with them as well, and they're trained to use all of those things. If we have an active shooter situation and you pull a student into the classroom and they're bleeding, then you know you're going to have to do the best you can with that person. Unfortunately, in an active shooter situation, somebody's going to die in all likelihood. Okay, we're trying to mitigate the damage as much as possible. We can never, as long as someone is always willing to lose their own life to take somebody else's, we can't beat that person. Okay, so we just have to do the best that we can in regards to that situation. And again, we can hypothesize all these situations. I'm just trying to give you folks the best options for you. I'd be happy to talk to you more about that afterwards, because you know that's some good training if you're willing to take it up on your own. But you know, the likelihood of that, you know, is remote, I would think. So, yes.
Regarding our offices, if we're in the building, in the restroom, or going to the next hour coffee mug or something, you're saying you want our office door closed and locked? Or is that like when we leave the building, make sure it's locked?
Donnie? Oh, she's talking about locked doors and whether when we just go into the restroom or when do they need to be locked when we're leaving the restroom?
I don't think, if you're just making a quick trip down the hallway or something, no, I think when you go to class and you're gonna be gone for an extended period of time, that's when you need to make sure you've got your belongings and everything is locked up.
But yeah, I would say.
I don't lock my office every time. I'm old, so I can't lock my door every time I go to the bathroom.
He'd spend all day looking for his keys, so. No, but that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about, you know, I got to run to the copy room for 2 minutes and back, yeah, that's understandable. But if you've got a class, certainly you don't want to be leaving your office open. I think that's kind of, you know, general. So, any other questions? I did want to take the opportunity to introduce Sergeant Manning, who is here, and he is one of our SROs. He'd be happy to answer any of your questions as well if you have further questions. Is there any other questions?
We can only see his arm, I presume.
Well, he's over there, trust me. He works evening shift, so, you know, for a lot of you, unless you're teaching tonight, he's, again, our SROs are staggered so that one's here, so that we have somebody here all day long that the campus is open from 7:30 till 10:30 at night. So he comes in later in the afternoon, but I wanted you to all have the opportunity to see who our SROs are so that you can recognize them. Obviously, it's pretty clear cut, but you know, just to have him here so that he could answer any further questions that somebody may have that a little more detail oriented than what I could do for you. So, but if there's no other questions.
Let me mention one thing.
Okay.
you did mention there's gonna be a fire drill this semester. There's gonna be a lockdown this semester sometime. But what I want to make you aware of is that when we have that lockdown, the doors will be operable. So that means when we have that lockdown, we have a panic button that's already been installed at the reception desk. We're gonna hit that thing, and if you're outside, you won't get in. So there's gonna be about, I think they told me they had this building to do a little bit of work and the Lyman building to do a little bit of work. Then they're finished. And so I told him we were gonna have a drill in about 2 weeks. He said, oh, we'll be finished, okay? But before we do anything, I'm gonna have somebody stationed at every door on this campus, at taps, everywhere, so that when we push that button, we know if there's a door that doesn't lock. So every door, including Watauga, should lock when we do that. So just be aware that if you happen to be outside when we call that lockdown and it happens, and then you're going to do what it says there, run.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not going to get in the building. Now you can always get out,
Yes.
but you just can't get in.
Yes, the doors are set that even when you cannot enter from the outside at night, even, for example, if you get stuck in a building, you're working late or something, those doors are always going to allow you to go out. Okay, that's how they're programmed right now. So.
And on the sliders, if the power goes out again and you happen to be in A, E, or B, you'll see on the door handle it says push. Well, all you got to do is push that thing and that door will open wide open. So don't panic if you get in and you're standing there waiting for it to open and it's not going to open for you. Push it, it'll open.
Now, what did I just say? That if you tell people not to panic, what's going to happen? But unless there's any other questions, one last slide for you. This Friday, Hawaiian shirt day, so if you want to go ahead and wear a Hawaiian shirt and jeans, by all means. I'm just kidding, of course. That's probably really up to Tuesday and Laura to make that call. But otherwise, thank you all very much. Appreciate it.